We are Campaign Force. This is the Veterans in Politics podcast. Let's introduce you to our guest.
In this episode, we meet Sarah Atherton Mp, the only woman regular army veteran in politics in the House of Commons, having begun her career in the Intelligence Corps. Service is in Sarah's DNA, and we find out about her military family, life as an army wife as well as that of a soldier, her career after the army in the NHS, ending up finally with her becoming a brewer. Sarah is authentic, honest, and unapologetically herself. This is an episode set to inspire many into politics, not just women, and offers a great insight into exactly what it is like being a brand new MP. It's time for you to listen to the conversation.
So, without further ado, delighted to welcome the very first female MP for Wrexham, and also the very first Conservative MP for Wrexham, and that is Sarah Atherton, Member of Parliament. Sarah has had a varied career focused on public service. So started off in the Intelligence Corps, and has also been a nurse, a social worker, I believe, and has worked in industry as well, and enterprise. So deep career centred in public service, but also has been out there in the real world of enterprise as well, so to speak. So we're delighted to have her today to join us on the 8th in the series of Web Campaign Force. So Sarah, I'm going to shut up. You just want to say hello and perhaps let people know what we've been up to today?
Oh, well, hello, Johnny, and really good to see you all. And I hope you appreciate I've changed my study around, or my little study space, to incorporate a bit of military stuff for you. So I'm really pleased to see you. So, well, my day has been, as you can imagine, a little bit chaotic. I know what I'm not going to say, but you can guess how my day has gone. We've had a team meeting this morning, which lasted an hour and a half. I've had a 2-hour whips meeting with my caucus, which are the new intake of MPs. We called the 109. We spent 2 hours over lunch doing that. We've put out a press release, long awaited in my area, and I'm being bombarded as we speak with requests for media reports. So yeah, can't wait for today to be over when I'll be having my end of day beer. So it's been a busy day.
So a bit of a, I guess, a very interesting introduction to politics. And you mentioned beer as well there. So is it right that you used to run a brewery?
I did. I'm a big real ale fan, massive real ale fan. In fact, as this was sold as a fireside meeting, I was going to have a real ale with me, but I think the sun's shining and I feel a bit dreadful if I start drinking in front of you. But I am a real ale fan. I started off by brewing in my shed until I was inundated with rats, so I had to stop that. So I was part of Camera, and 3 of us back in 2009 set up a small sort of hobby microbrewery, which actually did really well. I went to Sunderland University, did a short course in brewing. 2 women and a man, which is quite unusual. Female brewers are called Brewsters, and we set up commercially, and it was really good. Actually, it was a really good team to begin with. We won Champion Bitter of Wales, and then we sold the brewery on from that point. So yeah, hard graft is brewing, hard cold graft.
Well, no word of a lie. I actually received my renewal pack from Camera today.
I hope you renewed. You get beer token.
My card. Yeah, I'm direct debit. So yeah, it's arrived through the post today, which is really weird and spooky. And of course, the military have a long tradition with the brewing, because I actually went out on the town in Cardiff with Lieutenant Colonel Brain from Brains Brewery, who was commanding officer of 3 Royal Welsh, where my friend was the adjutant. And he explained to me, as we were in his old grandfather's office, which I now believe is a pub, which was the original brewery in Cardiff, that the family have a long tradition in sending the sons and off to the military to have a period of military service before returning back to the family business. So there you go, nice little segue. But anyway, obviously, before that, though, you have had some military service, as mentioned in the Intelligence Corps. But why did you end up into politics? What really drove you into politics in the first place?
Oh, God. Right, we're going to go back 35 years now. I think I got into the military originally because I came from Chester, which was a garrison town. And my first boyfriend was a soldier, as you might expect. A few of us can resonate with that. And I was a bit of loss. I was about 16, 17, and I signed up and went into the military. Did 4 years, then got married pretty young, and to an infantryman. And we weren't going to be posted together. So after a while, I decided that I was the one that was going to leave. So I left and became an infantry wife in Whittington Barracks at Lichfield, and where he was training. And I had a child then, and he went off to Bosnia under the Cheshire Regiment, came back a very different man. Mm-hmm. We now know what it is, but in those days it didn't have a title. And of course, I suspect it's the same today. You know, if you ask for help, you're weak. So he wouldn't ask for help, and subsequently our marriage fell apart, leaving me with a child. Child was premature. I was struggling because if you think about it, I'd been in the army. Everything was about the army, my friends, my culture, my background, my finance. And suddenly I was here with a sick child. I could strip an SMG blindfolded and reconstruct it, but I didn't know one end of a child to another. And at that point, I relied very heavily on military wives that knew what to do. They knew everything, and I was really guided by them. So I have a strong affinity with spouses, military spouses, and this is something that we might touch on later on, that I'd like to see the covenant expand further into, supporting families of veterans and service personnel, not just cutting off at that point. But then I had to decide what to do in life. You know, I had a young child, nowhere to live, of course. By now we're at the Dale camp in Chester, nowhere to live, no income, no money. And unless I worked for GCHQ in Cheltenham, I had no job either, but I had a sick child. So I decided I had to retrain. So I went nursing, and then I was a nurse for a long while. Then I became a district nurse. And then I realised, for about 15 years, then I realised that health and social care is inextricably linked. So if you're going in to help someone with chronic breathing conditions and they've got water trickling down the walls, you're never going to solve it. So I was lucky enough at that point to get a sponsorship to go to university to become a social worker. And I did that for a long while and specialised in mental health and then older people with dementia. So for almost 27 years, I've been working in the public sector, supporting people, helping people to help themselves initially. And when they can't do that, whether they're incapacitated or whatever, then I would step in for them. And then in amongst all that, I dabbled in my brewery, which I did for about 4 years and thoroughly enjoyed. So that's my career in a nutshell. And I got to about 50. I thought, you know what, I've probably had enough. I need a change. And someone knocked on my door, and it was local elections. And you know, and you think, I'd never been politically orientated, and I just thought, you know what, I'm not interested. You know, I'm not, as we all do, we see someone come to the door, we just walk away or pretend you're on the phone or whatever. But I've got a glass arch, and I opened the kitchen door, and there was his smiley face, and I thought, oh bloody hell, I'm committed. I've got to go and open the door now. And it wasn't his politics that sold me, it was him that sold me. He sold him to me to work for my area where I live. And it was him that got me into the party I'm in now, the Conservatives. And I really liked him. And he must have thought, oh, I've got a hook here, I'm going to come back. So we knocked about 3 times during the local elections. And I started to listen to what he had to say. And I thought, you know what, he's a nice guy. You know, he'll do good for my community, because he was standing for a local election. And I didn't really care what party he was in. That didn't resonate with me at all. So I voted for him. And then when he was a local councillor, he then came back on the door and said, have you ever thought about going into politics? And that's when I seriously listened to him. And that's how I got into politics. So I can keep going. I can keep waffling if you want, or do you want to?
No, I think really, Sarah, you've highlighted fundamentally, and it's a common trait within many of the conversations we've had already, particularly those that have worked in public-facing, public service-orientated careers, is that often it's taken someone asking them to stand up and serve again, as we term it. That it's not people that have necessarily, from an early age said they want to be an MP, and they've, crafted this career, that the special advisor route, they've become a councillor, worked in for their local party, then so that route, I guess what you're really demonstrating to us, and it's really inspiring fact, is that just being yourself and being true to your service and your career and who you are, but also the tragedy sometimes is that being asked in the first place is often just a stroke of luck. And for me, it strikes me as that was a bit of a stroke of luck that someone knocked on your door. And if someone hadn't knocked on your door, then what would have happened? So what we're trying to do with Campaign Force is to basically, rather than knocking on the door, we want to open the doors in an organised fashion. So what's your experience been like at Westminster so far, having had someone knock on your door and engaged with politics? What's it been like? Has it matched expectation?
Well, what I should have said to you is you're not going to get a polished political performance from me. I'm not an orator. I was a Lance Corporal in the army. I'm focused on people. I have the skills that we all have who's been through the military. We always polish our shoes. We're always 5 minutes early. We always try and prepare. But I'm not a massive orator. I sometimes struggle to get my point over, but I've got the passion behind it to get it over. So I will get it over. And, and some of that, it has been an obstacle for me. So going into Westminster, I wasn't an advisor. I wasn't in the civil service. I was, a Lance Corporal. And there I was, almost going back in the army at Hogwarts. And your whips are like your RSMs. They see and know everything before you do. There's the media skulking in corners. You've got to be very careful. You've got this camaraderie of the 109 I mentioned before, which is the new intake, quite a new group of Conservative politicians. So it is very much like going into the army. I was really pleased when I arrived and someone said, "There's your coat hook, and you're now no longer Sarah Atherton, you're called Wrexham. And there's your coat hook with Wrexham, and there's the little bit of ribbon that you hang your basket hilted broadsword on." And I thought, oh, well, that'll be useful. So the traditions, I love the traditions. I love history anyway, architecture, all that. I really bounce off all that. But it's not been easy. The first thing I wanted to do was find the shooting gallery. And it took me 3 weeks before someone said, "Oh, we don't have it anymore." It was a wine cellar, but it's now gone. There's a hairdresser's somewhere. I don't know where, but I probably would be more keen on the shooting gallery than the hairdressers. It's not been easy because I don't know the etiquette of politics. I don't know the protocols. I've made lots of clangers. I got stuck in, we were voting, and you go from the chamber to the division to vote. But it's all time, and they lock the doors, and you've got so many minutes to do it. Well, I got stuck in the toilets on the Brexit vote and wasn't allowed out. I came out and I was told by the whips, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I voted. Don't worry, I voted. But, I'm a woman of a certain age. We've had 3 votes. I've been here. It's now 10 o'clock. I needed a wee." So I went to the loo and he said, "Yeah, but you can't be here now because you can't go through and vote again because you voted. And you can't go out because the Master of Arms has locked the doors." And I'm just thinking, well, what am I supposed to do? So I was bundled back into the toilets and told not to come out for 15 minutes. So there's all these sort of things that you have no idea what is going on. I have to say, on the first week there, we were doing about 14, 15 hours a day. They were massively long days. And you are like, a rabbit in the headlights. And I remember walking past Liz Truss, and she was on the front bench, and I had no idea. And I said hello to Madam Deputy Speaker, and then just walked past the front bench, past Black Rod, and excuse me, Liz, handbags, whatever. And I'm wondering why the whole chamber's looking at me. And of course, I didn't realise I wasn't supposed to do it. So I sort of turned it into a bit of a joke, and I think I got away with it, although I had to write apologetic letters to virtually everyone in the chamber that day. So it's been exciting. I've met amazing people that you only see on television. I've doubted myself. I've cried in corners. We had no offices to begin with. It was a long time before we got an office. And I used to take solace in the library because I really felt I was out of my depth at sometimes. And the library is a beautiful place where only members can go. And it's very secure, very warm, very friendly, because behind the theatre of the chamber, everyone actually gets on reasonably well.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that I wish the population could see.
Yeah.
And the chamber is just like going to the Globe Theatre. It's just drama, and all the work's done in the background. So I used to like going into the library because it was friendly. And then eventually I got an office not until about February, and it was in Normanshire North, which is the furthest away from the chamber. So when a division bell goes, you literally have to run. They hold people back and you have to run. And it's funny because when the whips were allocating offices, suddenly everyone couldn't walk, they had gout, they had verrucas, they had athlete's foot, you name it, they did everything to get an office near the chamber. But I actually quite like it being further away. So it's been a roller coaster. Of course, it's not been the easiest 6 months with Brexit, the pandemic. I've been made PPS for the Wales office, and I didn't even know what that was, but I was just told if you get offered anything, you don't refuse it. So I'm still trying to find my feet with that. I'm no good with technology, as we found out before, Johnny, trying to do a Teams meeting. I'm no good with technology. I've had to take on 5 members of staff. I've got 2 offices I run. I've got contracts to do. This has all been reasonably new to me, all within 6 months. And over the last few days, for example, I've had over 800 emails that all need replying to. So it's been interesting and tiring, and I've lost a stone in weight. And I walk about 10 to 15 miles a day around Westminster. But I wouldn't change it for the world, because I know I'm there because people relate to me, because I'm normal. Yeah. Because people can resonate with me, they can speak to me. I've got no airs and graces. You know, I stand up and I say what I see, and people really like that. I don't think they like the polished, finished look anymore. No.
Yeah, we certainly went into depth around that subject when we had Alicia Kearns and we're talking about authenticity, and she was unapologetic, and certainly get that from you in what you've just said. And it's refreshing for us, because for many of the people that we trying to inspire have never engaged with the political process or voted in the first place, let alone consider going for public office. So for us, it's really inspirational to hear that, really refreshing too. But what you just described there sounds like an absolute nightmare. But your career has been quite varied. What are those skills, experience, values that you've really had to dip into to get you through some quite difficult times, and obviously difficult at the moment with what's happening in the country? Are there any key skills that you've really kind of pulled out of the bag from, whether it's the military or your NHS service or business?
Hello, it's your host Johnny here. Sorry to interrupt, I'll be very brief. If you're getting value from this conversation, don't forget to put something in the comments below, but more importantly, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on future conversations. In the meantime, back over to Sarah.
I think I always draw on people. I like to listen to people. I like the fact that people can make their own decisions and make foolish decisions, but that's their decision. So I think, if you always think that people have a right to take a course of action, I think that's a really good skill. That doesn't come from a military background. Probably that comes from my social work background. People can make unwise decisions, but their decision is just as valid as anyone else's. And that leads on to the fact you can disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that's actually quite hard to hold on to. Well, I'm certainly trying, because you do get a lot of bad press as a politician. I don't touch my social media. My social media is toxic. And if I ever looked at it, I would probably resign. And it's about actually as well recognizing what you can deal with and what you can't. And I'm pretty resilient. I'm pretty thick-skinned. I'm a bit older. I've been around a bit. So I probably take a lot more than perhaps younger people do. There's definitely the male-female split. There's lots of issues there, which I've come up against. But I think I just go at it and just think, well, my voice is just as good as anyone else's. Or because, I don't quite understand some of the terminology or the etiquette that's used in politics doesn't make my voice, and therefore the people of Wrexham's voice, any less. And I think when you get to this point, you overcome your own fears, because I know I'm speaking for 50,000 other people. And therefore I will stand up and I will challenge, because it's not about me, it's about the 50,000 people. And that perhaps comes from the army, that I'm now a leader, scarily enough, as a Lance Corporal, now a leader of 50,000 people, and I'll make sure that their voice is heard. And I think that spurs me on. So resilience, adaptability, recognising your weaknesses, actually, not perhaps saying I'm going to do anything about them because I'm too old, I'm too old to, an old dog doesn't change its tricks. I will just avoid them. So if I know I'm pretty bad at speaking on the hoof without preparing, then I won't put myself in that situation, or I'll try not to. So it's about mitigating around your weaknesses and play into your strengths.
Well, I think that's going to, certainly saying it as a Lance Corporal, we've got a few Lance Corporals in on this call today, so that's going to be deeply inspiring. And also, as we know from the Intelligence Corps, very used to punching above our weight as junior NCOs and briefing people more senior, and being able to hold their own. So I definitely see that as a transferable skill, kind of with my Intelligence Corps bias there for a second. But in order to get there in the first place, it seems to me is that you've maintained that authenticity, which is great. Please do keep it up as a bit of a plea. But to get through all those hoops, to get selected, to go through the Parliamentary Assessment Board and get selected for Wrexham, etc., you've got quite a varied background. How did you kind of reconcile the public service, the entrepreneurship, and maintain your authenticity? How did you get that across?
Wrexham's never been conservative, and in fact we've never had a Conservative MP female for Wales at all, and the first one by virtue of the cant. And it's not been easy, because I have come against an institutional barrier, and I think it's because I am so focused on people, and I've done that public service, that actually somewhere like Wrexham, which is an old mining town, they recognise the value in me, because I've scrubbed bedpans, I've helped people to the toilet, I've helped people in crisis. I've not come in through Eton, I've not been to, or they've been to Manchester and Liverpool universities. I've not come through the usual process that they see their politicians. I'm not a barrister, for example. A lot of politicians come through the legal profession. And I think that resonated with the public, and it resonated with my association. So the first thing I did was, when I spoke to this chap who knocked on my door, and I thought he was nice and friendly and he got me into politics, I said I'd like to become a community councillor. I want to sort out the green blue algae in the lake. I want to put up a few bike racks. That's all I want to do. Some nice local stuff, and I want to get involved locally. And he said, yeah, great, we'll sign you up to that. So so I thought, well, okay, it's common sense really, but I'm surprised common sense isn't common sense to everyone, is it? There's this big issue at the moment about common sense. What's common sense to me might not be to you. So, but it seemed common sense to me that if people don't really know me, because although I've lived in this area, I've always worked full time. And then when you come home, you do your own thing. I wasn't really involved in the area. People don't know me. I need to sell myself. So it's common sense to me to make a little leaflet up and put it through people's doors. Well, they've never done, I didn't get it, but they've never done that in this area. So I actually romped home on an election for community councillor. And that was my first foot in the door, really, into committees, because I've never been involved with committees and voices on committees that just want to be heard but never have any outcomes, because that frustrates me, because I'm a very outcome-focused person rather than process. And there are people there that just like to hear the sound of their own voice, and nothing's ever achieved. So I went in there like a bull in a china shop, and actually it worked really well. Some people didn't like me, so I thought, okay, I could either lock horns with them or I could kill them with kindness. And killing them with kindness definitely works. Definitely works. Keep keeping the cakes in, keep being nice to them, and eventually they came round, and we achieved, in that few years I was a community councillor, we achieved a lot in the area. And then we got the publicity, so it went further than the area, it went into the constituency. And actually I found that really rewarding, and I look back and think, oh God, what the hell have I done? It was really nice before. But because I'd proved myself to the local area, and I'd proved myself to the association, because I put myself out for them. Because you've got to work at this. If you want to get anything, you've got to put the effort in. It just doesn't come to you. And I proved myself with the association because I've been fundraiser. So they always give a woman the fundraiser job because they have to be in the kitchen serving tea and cake. But by doing that,
Sharon said the same, actually. Sharon Hodgson said the same experience. First job, they gave her the cooking and the fundraising, exactly the same.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, I don't mind. It's a foot in the door. But actually, particularly with the Conservative associations, that they're a little bit older. It's a good way to get to know people. Oh, you like your tea a certain way, don't you, Mrs. Jones, or whatever? Well, they're the ones that are voting for you later down the line. So there's method in the madness, really. So it's about taking every opportunity that you can and not thinking, oh, I'm not doing that because I don't want to, or why should I? Or I'm a woman, why should I have to cook? Thinking, well, what can I get out of that? So I was sort of recognised then within the party as being something slightly different. And then an assembly, I'm in Wales, so there's an assembly election came up, and it was a no hope, it was a forlorn hope. And they always let people cut their teeth on a forlorn hope. And it was Allen and Deeside, and it was a by-election.
I remember,
and, yeah, and I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. And I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. But my God, what I didn't realise was because by-elections are so high profile, because nothing else is going on, all of the UK media came in. And that really gave me a baptism of fire grounding, which I think if I'd have known beforehand, I probably would have shied away from, but I didn't know. So, this is something else that we'll all do. If we, in for a penny, in for a pound. If you start something, you're going to see it through, whether you hate it or not, and you're going to do it to your best of your ability. And I think that's probably something I've learned from my military background. And then I was I was asked to stand for selection for Wrexham. And by now, the political landscape had changed a bit, and it was becoming a little bit of a hot seat, because beforehand, it's never been Conservative anyway, any time. No one wanted to do it. You'd be lucky to get 2 people. Now it was a hot seat, but I'd served the teas and the coffees, and I'd taxied people around and, done all that sort of thing. So I knew pretty well it was probably in the bag. And that was one way of my selection. I treated it like an election, but it wasn't something I did 2 weeks before.
No.
I'd been doing it for a long time before, but that wasn't difficult for me because I actually quite enjoy being with people. So I was liking what I was doing as well. So that's the way I got selected.
Wow, what a story. Putting the graft in, being authentic, being a people person. These are, sage advice for people looking to get involved in any level of politics. But you've already mentioned you're, the first woman, for example. So why? And we've joked a little bit about some of the women jobs that are given in politics initially, and we need to really do better at that. But clearly, you persevered, grafted, got through. But why do we have so few women in politics? Still in Parliament, underrepresented, in local government. I think just 1/3 of all council leaders are women. So what's the issue? What can we do to improve that situation? Do we need to?
Yeah, we do. We do. There's more women than men in Wales. I think that goes for the UK as well. And we're vastly underrepresented, not just in politics, but in all levels of public office, from community councils, local councils, police and crime commissioners, governors of schools, etc. We are underrepresented, and that needs to change. And we're quite a traditional country as Wales, I would hesitate to say. And it's always been quite difficult for women to break into that. And I suppose I'd liken it to, I've just written a report to go to House magazine, because one of the things I want to look at on the Defence Select Committee is the role of female service leavers and female personnel and women in the defence industry. And I've been looking at some statistics around complaints made against abuse and harassment, why women leave the army, a lot around families, wraparound care, family-friendly policies. And that's not too dissimilar from politics. Because as I said before, I can work, particularly Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I can work 15-hour days. Now, there are quite a few mums, like Alicia, she's got young kids. A lot of women wouldn't do that. They'd say, no, I've got young kids at home, I want to be with them. It's quite a compromise if you want a family life, being a politician. And I know it's changing as the army and the military is changing, but it's got a long way to go yet. And I think that puts a lot of people off. I get targeted particularly on social media because I'm a woman. My fellow female MP colleague in Ismon in Anglesey, she gets particularly targeted as well. That will put a lot of people off. I mean, I'm thick-skinned and I don't like what I read about me. And I think that puts people off. So I think, and I think we're coming from a position of change. We're moving away from quite a male-dominated profession. And there is the old boy network, without a doubt. I'd argue against anyone that said there wasn't, and there is. And they do tend to close ranks sometimes when it's looking at about selection, particularly when it's a hot seat. They will close ranks, and you don't tend to get a look in as a female. So there's a lot of reasons why we're underrepresented. I'm involved with Women to Win, which is a Conservative organisation which helped me a lot, particularly prepping me through my assessment board. But I'm also involved with the Women's Equality Network, which is a cross-party network based in Cardiff, and it's trying to help women from all backgrounds get into public office. And that's not just politics, although primarily it is politics, but it's anything to do with charities or governors or researchers, and trying to promote women. And I'm very involved with them. I actually was a mentee on the first programme they did about 3 years ago. And it was the Conservative Party that put me in touch with it. And I was the only Conservative in the village. There was only me there. And actually, do you know what? It was great. Because you actually see beyond politics, you see the person, and that just suits me down to the ground. And we've got a really close-knit group still going, and then I contribute them, and I was supposed to host them in Parliament during this COVID lockdown, so I obviously haven't done it, so I've had to do it via Skype. But I'm helping quite a few women on that group crack into what they want to do, not necessarily politics, but trying to promote them in public office. So I'm really keen to promote women because we are underrepresented.
Amazing to see that you're not just passionate about it vocally, but you actually practice what you preach too. And I know you very kindly offered earlier on when we spoke earlier on today that any women in particular, indeed anyone,
not just women, but
anyone that wants to reach out for advice, fire an email to you after this call, and you're very happy to talk to them, which is really generous of you.
Thanks to our guests, and thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, hit subscribe now. Alternatively, you can support our mission by checking out in the show notes below, where you can rate, donate, or become our mate. Thank you.